Alright, I'm going to show you just real quickly how you can create a lighting effect using the new point color feature in Anime Studio 11. So what you do is you have your scene that you want to apply lighting to. This is just a character with no background, but whatever is in your scene, this will work. You create a new vector layer on top of everything else. I'll just call this lighting. And you create a rectangle that covers everything in the visible area. So I'm going to back out a little bit so I can make a big enough rectangle. And let's turn off autofill and auto stroke, so we have just the shape of a rectangle. Now after the rectangle, you need to add some points that are going to control where the lighting actually goes. So in this case, I'm just going to have a beam of light coming across like this. Let's actually move it over this way. I'll translate. So I have a beam coming down across like this. Now, with the Create Shape tool, we'll select the rectangle and the extra points in here and say Create Shape. So in this case, these points, this little curve segment here, because it's not connected to the rectangle, it doesn't really change the fill of the rectangle. There is a stroke applied to it, so if we zoom in enough, we'll see there's a stroke. So after creating this shape, you could have set this to fill, or afterwards you can just turn off the stroke here in the style palette, because all we're interested in is the fill. So I've turned off the stroke. Now I'll change the fill color to black, or whatever you want your dark color to be. Let's try dark blue, and a certain amount of transparency. So the transparency setting here is going to be whatever you want the dark areas to look like. So it should only be a little bit transparent, because that's going to look, that's going to be the darkness here. Okay. I'm going to zoom back in a little bit so we can see that. To see the transparency here, the transparency effect of the rectangle, make sure that transparency is turned on here in the display quality settings. Okay. So now we have a rectangle and this line. Now I'm going to go in, and they were created as one shape. That's important here. So this line is part of the rectangle, even though it doesn't define the outline of the rectangle. So now with the Color Points tool, I'll select these 2 points. So you can select by holding down the Command or the Control key and dragging out a selection rectangle. Or you could use Select Points to first select those 2 points and then choose the Color Points tool. Either way, we've got these 2 points selected, and now the Color Points tool is active. We'll click here to set the color. They should also be a similar shade of blue or black, or it doesn't really matter. The part that matters here is that they're going to be totally transparent. I say the color doesn't matter. It does matter a little bit with the blend, so you can actually get an effect where the lighting will change color. So here we'll go from red. Actually, that looks kind of cool, so I'm going to do that. Say OK. So now these 2 points are defining, and the line between them define an area where it's totally transparent. So the darkness effect of the rectangle is not apparent here. There's a hole basically in the rectangle defined by these 2 points in the connecting curve. So I've assigned a color. I can also drag left to right with the Color Points tool to adjust the strength of the color on these 2 points. So this area has more light than I want, so I'm going to turn the strength down, which narrows this lighting region. So how about like that? I can also deselect the points and then maybe turn this one down a little more to shape the lighting region, this one up a little bit. Alright. So now I can move these points around. I can do that during an animation, or I can just place them and leave them. I can zoom out and I can place one of the points off screen if I want to, and I can render the result. So here, let's render. Here's what the final result would look like. Now, I used transparency on this rectangle because I can see exactly what's happening on the canvas. The other option would be, let's select this rectangle shape again. I'm going to make it not transparent at all. And the points here, I'm going to set their color to not transparent either. So we're going to make it red. Let's not make it red. Let's make it a light color. So a pale yellow, but it's not transparent. Okay. So now I still have the shape of this lighting in the rectangle, but I can't see my character through it. But what I can do in the lighting layer, in its settings dialog, I can set the blending mode to something else. So I can set it to multiply, for example. Now, the issue here is you can't see it on the canvas, but when you render, you can see the effect. The layer blending modes only get applied to rendered output. So in this case, you'd have to make some adjustments, render, make some adjustments, render, until you're happy with it. And then what I would probably do is this lighting layer, it's clipped off, I would bring it up and I would say hide in editing view. So once it's the way I like, I can hide that layer. And now I can work on the Space Woman, and the lighting won't cover her up, but when I do a full render like this, the lighting does get applied. So experiment with blending modes, transparency, you know, there's different ways to achieve this. I've played with a couple that give a nice effect, but I'm sure people will over time discover interesting things that I haven't thought of yet. So have fun.